Is truth an option? When Jesus was brought before Pilate, he said, "For this I came into the world, to bear witness to the truth." Pilate then asked him, "What is truth?" It's very popular today to deny the possibility of truth. People typically say things like, "There is no such thing as truth, but only opinion," and that every person's opinion is just as valid and relevant as everyone else's. When they do so, I think they are typically concerned that every person should be affirmed and valued for who and what they are, their lives honoured, their opinions, views and beliefs listened to and taken into account as being honest expressions of their experiences and the lessons which they have learned from those experiences, and all this be done in a friendly manner. I want to be clear that I have no problem with this. In fact, I would enthusiastically sign up to such a statement. What is important to me is that as well as what each of us has experienced and the ideas which each of us has, there is the matter of what is actually real. What I care about most is not what I believe or what anyone else believes, but what is true. If I'm wrong about something, I want to be shown that I am wrong. And whenever this happens, I hope that I'll always have the grace to thank the person who has shown me my error. Not so long ago, it was generally believed that the Earth was flat. This is obviously true, otherwise we'd all fall off. The Sun orbits the Earth. The Vatican condemned Galileo for contradicting this. Women are inferior to men. Thomas Aquinas taught this. It is fine to subject black Africans to abject slavery. The British Empire was, in its early days, built on this. Jews are subhuman. St. John Chrysostom, among many others, taught this. The people who honestly believed these things thought that they had good reasons for doing so. They had learned them from their experience and from the cultural norms in which they were steeped. However, none of these beliefs actually correspond to reality. They are all invalid, wrong, and were unhelpful. That is not just my opinion. It is a fact, and it is important to accept that it is a fact. These wrong beliefs all stood in the way of progress. Some beliefs are mistaken, and some practices are unjust, such as the practice of FGM, female genital mutilation. This is not just my opinion, or the common view of a group to which I belong. It is simply true. If one restricts oneself to saying, "It is my opinion that FGM is unacceptable," then its practitioners can fairly respond, "That's an interesting opinion, but we disagree, and you have no right to interfere with our practice. You should respect our autonomy and honour our culture." The idea that truth is a nonsense implies the following. There is no such thing as expertise. My opinion as to how a brain tumour ought to be operated on is as worthwhile as that of a consultant brain surgeon. I may be a doctor, but that is of physics, not medicine. There is no such thing as sanity. The belief of a lunatic who thinks he can fly is just as valid as that of a sane man who knows he cannot. There is no such thing as morality. The view of a Nazi who thinks it is right to exterminate Jews is just as worthy of respect as that of a humanitarian who thinks that this is an atrocity. Religion is no more than a hobby, as faith and belief are entirely personal, and the idea that God is real or that Jesus is the way, the truth and the life are simply comforting platitudes, poetry rather than true statements which are the basis of a real cause for hope. Evangelization is inappropriate, as it is not our business to try to convince other people to believe in the same way as we do, because their beliefs are just as valid as ours, and we should let them be. Adult religious education is inappropriate, as no theological formation is preferable over any other, and it is no one's business to educate anyone in orthodox belief, because orthodoxy is just one option among many, with nothing special to recommend it. There is no such thing as good liturgical practice or bad liturgical practice. The only thing that matters is what various people like or dislike. Moreover, the belief that there is no such thing as truth, and that all beliefs ought to be accepted, contradicts itself, as it ought to accept the following belief. The belief that there is no such thing as truth is wicked, and those who believe this ought to be executed. In which case, all those who believe that truth is a nonsense ought to allow themselves to be put to death, whereas those who hold the other view, which is not mine, have no reason not to put their belief into practice. Of course, there is still plenty of room for personal preferences and honest disagreement. Some things, like what colour to paint one's bathroom, are a matter of personal preference and little more. Some things, like what side of the road one should drive on, are important matters of convention. Some things, like whether it would be better for Scotland to withdraw from the United Kingdom, are complex questions about which people of goodwill are bound to disagree. Manifestly, the question as to how one comes to a knowledge of what is true remains unanswered by what I've said here. But that is another question. There is no point in asking, how can I know what is true, before one has an idea that there is a truth out there waiting to be known.